Welcome to Denver, Colorado, and Verizon Game Time Live. Larry Michael, Brian Tinsman, the Redskins and Denver Broncos going to kick it off for the 13th time overall in their history. 6-6, the all-time record in this series. They don't play very often, but when they do, they're memorable. Super Bowl 22, an example. Much anticipation for this game, Brian, because the Redskins, with a win here, could just find a way to get to 500 next week.
And this is really a game that kind of defines this point in the season for them. You know, Robert certainly looks like he has turned the corner physically. This offense is rolling. The defense has played two of their best games of the season the past 2 weeks. Even the week before that in Oakland was their best performance of the season. So they're getting better as a team right now. This is a big litmus test for them. This is a big gut check for this team.
It's a beautiful day here in Denver, Colorado. A little bit of a breeze. Temperatures expected to reach the 70s. And, of course, when you're talking about the Denver Broncos, you're talking about Peyton Manning, but when you're talking about the Redskins, you're talking about RG3. And let's check him out warming up here on the field. On a gorgeous day, Robert out with the pink shoes, and the Redskins running game. Come on over here, Brian. Redskins running game has gotten 200 yards over the last 2 games, back-to-back 200-yard games. And Robert, obviously, a big part of that last week.
Absolutely. He's been engaged the last 2 weeks. He's had 77 and then 84 yards. You know, the 77 yards was more than he had in all of the games previous to that combined. Obviously, he ups that number last week, and he's really keyed this attack by him being more open in the pocket, by him taking off downfield when he needs to. He's really opened up more running lanes for guys like Alfred Morris and Roy Halou, who we saw last week in some pretty big spots.
RG3 last week had a pretty good quarterback rating, 105, very efficient in the victory over the Chicago Bears. Redskins victorious in that one, 45-41. Robert did show a burst, though, that we had not seen. Actually, over the last couple, 2-3 games, he's been getting better every game in terms of what he's been able to do running the football. And a lot of folks thought, well, maybe they're not calling the same game. They're calling a different game, and they're including more runs now. But it's no secret. Robert didn't have an offseason of training. He had an offseason of rehab. And then you got the preseason games, which he did not participate in. Then you get the first game of the season against Philadelphia Eagles. He had a little rust. And I thought that bye week really helped him a lot. He got a chance to recover from those first several games, and he's had a different spring in his step.
No question. I mean, head coach Mike Shanahan talked about the burst that you mentioned, and he really just didn't have that through the first 4 games. If you talk about a preseason slate being what gets players ready for the regular season, he had his preseason through the first 4 games of the season. Unfortunately, those games count, but certainly this is a guy that is absolutely, the key, the straw that stirs the drink here, and they really need him healthy. If he had waited until after the bye, he'd still be going through this period now. So it's great to see him finally looking like himself out there, being the player he can be. And I don't think that confidence is any short matter of what you're seeing out there. He looks confident, he sounds confident, he says he feels more confident out there, and it shows every week.
Directly in front of us right here, Pierre Garçon and Santana Moss, 2 of Robert's receivers. And we'll talk about Peyton Manning in a moment, but if you want to meet Pierre Garçon, come out to Harris Teeter and Reston this Tuesday, just a couple days away, between 12 and 1, for a chance to meet the Redskins' leading receiver and try his Harris Teeter signature sub, the Garçon de Pierre. So I wonder, it might be a little French dressing on that one.
I would have to imagine that it's going to be a little zesty. A little more than you might imagine when you actually have lunch there.
But again, you look at the Redskins' offense and what they've been able to accomplish. The Redskins are 4th overall in the National Football League. They're number 2 in average yards per game. And you got wide receivers. Aldrick Robinson had the big touchdown catch last week. And Jordan Reed, the rookie tight end, also really a coming-out party for him last week. 9 receptions. He had a touchdown catch. And he seems like a big-time weapon for Robert Griffin III and the Redskins' starting offense. Once again, you're watching Game Time Live, presented by Verizon. Larry Michael, Brian Tinsman here at Denver, Colorado. And I'm a little shocked by the weather. I mean, this is absolutely gorgeous. In the D.C. area, we've been getting freeze overnight, temperatures in the 30s. I would say right now it's not a cloud in the sky and 70 degrees here in Denver.
I mean, this feels like a preseason game, and this is certainly not what they talk about when they talk about the elements here in Denver. This is a place that can get very windy. This is a place, obviously, with the thin air. It can get rainy. It can get very snowy and pretty gross by the end of the season, but this is ideal weather. And, the Redskins actually probably did themselves a favor by practicing inside the bubble this week. They took it inside on Friday, certainly. And I don't think elements are going to play a role today unless the sun gets in the receiver's eyes.
You know, Brian, they talk about the altitude here, and Mike Shanahan coached here for 21 years as a head coach and assistant coach. And he said, you know, what you do is you don't come out here too early. You try to get out here as late as possible so that your body's oxygen isn't sapped. It's a little bit different than getting out to the West Coast when you're trying to get acclimated to a time change. He said that his experience has been Denver has a big advantage here, but the way to combat it is not to come out here a couple days early, stick to your routine, and not really worry about it. The Redskins are a well-conditioned team. We know that. That's one of the things they pride themselves. And, in fact, with that no-huddle offense, they seem to have tired the Chicago Bears defense down last week.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And if anyone should know what the altitude does to a team, it would be Mike Shanahan. He is the winningest coach in Denver Broncos history. And, you know, he is one who has certainly benefited from the elements here. This is something that you're not going to see in the early going of the game if it does have an effect on players. But, you know, this is a game that the Redskins are going to want to have a lead going into the fourth quarter, because that's when this is really going to play a factor, is during that recovery. The more, you know, the receivers are running go routes downfield, the more the guys in the trenches are banging up against one another, that's when you're going to start to see that recovery factor really come into play. So look for that, and also look for it to be a concern of theirs, certainly a consideration during the pregame inactives, which should be announced any minute now. You know, will they go with an extra lineman? Will they go with an extra receiver just in case, to make sure that they have the fresh legs that they need at the end of the game?
Here's the big man, Trent Williams, taking his leisurely laps around the field. And Trent Williams obviously trying to protect Robert Griffin III here today. The Broncos do like to get after the quarterback. They've got Von Miller back after a 6-game suspension. He played in last week's loss to the Indianapolis Colts, his first game back after those 6 games off. But last year, 18.5 sacks for Von Miller. And while the Denver defense isn't rated highly, they're rated 30th overall, first against the rush, last against the pass, a very odd combination of stats. You know that getting RG3, containing RG3, is definitely at the top of their priority list.
It certainly is, and you mentioned Von Miller, another guy, Robert Ayers out there. You know, he's no slouch on the other side, and it's a misleading stat when you look at just the numbers there. Certainly, they are giving up a lot of yards through the air, and they are not so great against the run. But Kyle Shanahan talked about it this week. This is a dangerous and very talented defense. They certainly have the Pro Bowlers on their roster. And, you know, even without a guy like Champ Bailey, who will be inactive today, this is not a defense that this team can sleep on. This is an opportunistic defense, a bit like what you see with the Redskins, maybe not quite statistically up to that level, but, you know, they're not going to sleep on this Denver D today.
Don't forget to catch Monday Morning Redskins Roundup, presented by Verizon, every day after a Redskins game. So Monday morning, 9 a.m., Redskins.com. Chris Russell from Redskins Radio, along with the one and only Chris Cooley, join forces to give you a recap of the previous Redskins game, taking a look at some of the highlights, locker room interviews. That's after every Redskins game, Monday Morning Redskins Roundup, presented by Verizon. Larry, Michael, Brian Tinsman on a gorgeous day here in Denver, Colorado, as RG3 warms up towards the center of the field on his knees. Now, well, let's stick with the wide receivers. They're coming right at us. We got a pretty good angle right here along the sideline. That's Matt LaFleur, the quarterback's coach for the Redskins, tossing it to RG3. And Pierre Garçon, you know, you look at his numbers this year. He's got a lot of catches, only 2 touchdowns. I think that's one thing the Redskins are looking to improve on, big plays from the passing game. They got a big one last week from Aldrick Robinson. There's Aldrick. But to get Garçon deep, to get him in the end zone, I think is really important today.
Well, no question about that. And also what you're looking for is more receptions in the red zone. This is a team that has had no trouble whatsoever moving the football this year. As you mentioned, they are a top 5 offense. That is a stat that is gauged by yards. But what they have struggled to do, and we finally saw them open up last week, is getting the ball into the end zone. They have had no trouble getting it down to the 30, to the 20. But it's really punching it in and not just going on field goals. Certainly they're going to need Kai Forbath to be perfect today. Cannot leave any points on the field, but that also includes getting the extra 4, not just settling for that field goal. And you know, you mentioned Pierre Garçon, you mentioned Jordan Reed earlier. Those are guys that are going to be keys today. Another guy that you also mentioned, Aldrick Robinson, who is a guy who we saw last year go on a couple runs where he just has a couple games in a row where he is dominant. Certainly a criticism of his over the years has been that he disappears at times. But it seems like when he gets hot and when he is clicking with Robert, he has a couple good showings in a row, and they're hoping for another big one today.
See, Pierre Garçon couldn't handle the footing there a little bit. Took a look at that grass. They've got some pretty good turf here in Denver. It is a natural grass surface. Take real good care of it, and they've got a complex system of pipes and heaters in the event. During the winter, you got a lot of snow, obviously, in this part of the country, so the games that are played in December, no doubt about it, you need a special type of surface to be able to grow grass. And one thing we haven't talked about, Brian, is the Redskins special teams. And when you see Trendon Holiday out there to return a kickoff and a punt, he's got a 105-yarder for a touchdown this year. He's got a punt return for a touchdown this year. He's got 6 touchdowns with returns over the last year and a half or so. So no rest for the Redskins special teams today.
Not at all, and you're also talking about a guy, though, who fortunately, while Keith Burns didn't teach him to be fast, Keith Burns really did polish him from a speed demon out of college into a guy that is one of the best at his craft in the NFL. He is one of the league's best returners right now. He is the only guy in the NFL with a kick return and a punt return this season, and he is certainly going to be a worthy adversary. See another slip right there. That's interesting on this sideline. But Trendon Holiday is a guy that they have to contain in order to be successful today. Battle for field position is going to be going on all day. Peyton also has no trouble moving the football. So if they can bottle up a guy like Holiday back, they give themselves a much better chance of being able to move the football when they get the ball.
We'll talk a little bit more about special teams, but you mentioned the footing. The Redskins seem to be having a little bit of a problem. The 2 wide receivers, Aldrick Robinson and Pierre Garçon, they could always go to a different cleat if they find that this turf isn't quite conducive to the shoes they're wearing right now. But I will give you some of the keys in a moment. But in terms of special teams, not only have the Redskins struggled in their coverage game, but their return game has been non-existent. And some of the decisions made by the return men to either field a punt inside the 10-yard line or to bring a kickoff out 8 yards deep, not getting to the 20, those are the little things Mike Shanahan talks about, some of the keys to winning. And for the Redskins, they can't afford any mistakes in the special teams game. You can't afford to give Peyton Manning any type of favors here today.
Well, I think the real frustration for them, too, as you mentioned, is that they don't have a whole lot of experience at returner. They went with Chris Thompson early. He's a guy who, coming out of college, did have some experience in college, but was coming off of a lot of injuries and clearly just wasn't cutting it for them. So they made the change to Josh Morgan, who's never done it. They have some guys with experience. They have D'Angelo Hall. They have Santana Moss. They even have Niles Paul. But all of those guys fit into their plans somewhere else. And so, slotting them in as a full-time returner is something that just hasn't been part of the game plan so far. I would have to imagine that if Josh Morgan, as you mentioned, isn't able to get it going, he has certainly showed more judgment than I think Chris Thompson did in terms of returning punts, kicks that are deep in the end zone. But they really need him to be a playmaker. They need that guy to be a playmaker. So whoever that is, don't be surprised if they shake it up again pretty soon if they don't get what they're looking for.
A couple of reminders. The Redskins pick and play. Will the Redskins offense, defense, or special teams score first in today's game? Submit your predictions for the Redskins pick and play. You could win an autographed Brian Arakpo photo, plus earn points all season long for a chance to win a VIP experience to next year's home opener. Go to RedskinsGametime.com to sign up today. And from HDL Healthcare, Redskins fans, are you in it to win it? HDL Inc. and the Washington Redskins challenge you to get more active and track your exercise minute in a log powered by Lose It. Maybe I didn't read that quite right. Track your exercise minute in a log powered by Lose It. Anyway, sign up at redskins.loseit.com. Download the Lose It app to your smartphone to win great prizes, including autographed items. Larry, Michael, Brian Tinsman, time for some of our keys to the game here in Denver as the Redskins continue to warm up. Kickoff today, 4:25 here in the Mile High City. Running game, obviously, we talk about it every week, but of particular importance here because of the explosiveness of Peyton Manning. You don't want to give him any more time than he needs. Last week, the Redskins almost had 10 minutes more in time of possession. They love to do that here today.
And that's something that they've really turned around. They did the same thing against the Cowboys the week before. They just weren't able to convert enough of their yardage into touchdowns that day. That was a little unfortunate, but that was really the turning point for them. They have found their running game, as you mentioned, back-to-back 200-yard games, which they haven't done in 20 years. that's a key today. You have to play keep away from an offense like this. The Broncos aren't going to run the ball. They're going to throw the ball all day long. Peyton Manning is their playmaker. They love throwing the ball to Eric Decker and Demaryius Thomas, 2 of the top 5 receivers in the league. So you're absolutely right. You have to do your defense a favor. When the defense is able to get you a 3-and-out, anytime they're able to get you a stop, you have to answer with a touchdown. Anytime Peyton Manning gives you a touchdown, you have to answer him right back. So this is really going to be a game where they're going to have to run a balanced offense, hope that they can keep the ball out of Peyton Manning's hands, and just keep pace with them.
All right, thank you, Brian. What are you up to today? Where should fans check Redskins.com or Redskins Gametime? What is happening with you guys today?
We'll have a ton of stuff up on Redskins Twitter, Redskins Facebook. We'll have quarterly updates. Instagram will have all the best shots of the day. We'll have galleries, game wraps, inactives, everything you need on Redskins.com, so make sure you check it out.
All right, that's Brian Tinsman. He does a heck of a job for the Redskins in the Redskins.com operation. So here's some of our keys to the game today as the Redskins tee it up at 4:25 Eastern time on this beautiful day in Denver, Colorado. As I mentioned to Brian Tinsman, to run that football, to be able to control the time of possession, to be able to dominate the line of scrimmage is a huge key for this football team. There's no doubt about it. The Redskins want to run the ball. That is their identity, and identities change from year to year. Last year, maybe a little bit more of a wide-open type of deal, but you see what the Redskins have done the last 2 games, effective running the football, and that's a big key for the Redskins today. Also, special teams. We talk about the special teams. Brian talked about it. We zeroed in on it a little bit. I think, to me, the Redskins can't afford to make any special teams mistakes, and I'm not just saying a bad decision on a kick return. No big plays allowed by the Redskins special teams. Convert your field goals. If you have to get 3 instead. There's Kai Forbath right in front of us, coming out on the playing surface, talking about field goals. If you get an opportunity to make a field goal, make the field goal. And I know that you get down there in the red zone, you want to come away with 7. 3 is not as good as 7, but if you have to kick the field goal, you make it. Good decisions on returns. Punt returners, don't field the ball inside your 10-yard line. Percentage is that you'll be able to see that ball kick through the back of the end zone and get the ball on the 20-yard line. And also deep kickoffs, let them go. I mean, Matt Prater, in this high altitude, he leads the NFL in touchbacks. So you're not going to see a lot of kickoff returns here today, and the altitude has a lot to do with it. Defensively, as we got to the stadium today, we heard word that Peyton Manning has not 1 but 2 sprained ankles, and one of his sprained ankles is a high ankle sprain. We didn't have information on that earlier this week. We thought that Peyton missed Wednesday's practice with an ankle sprain suffered against the Indianapolis Colts. So, if Peyton Manning has 2 ankle sprains, to me, it's time to gamble. To me, you could sit back and rush your normal rush. Even though Peyton Manning, as coach told us during the taping of the coaches show, has a 148 quarterback rating when being blitzed, this might be the time to blitz him, gamble a little bit. Maybe you can get to him. Maybe he'll cough up the ball. They fumbled the ball quite a bit so far this year. In terms of turnover ratio, the Redskins are a -1 and the Denver Broncos are a -2. So there is a need for the Redskins to try to force some turnovers, win that battle of turnovers. And obviously, it's going to be a shootout. I've said it all week. It's not going to be a 14-13 game. By the time this game's done, you're going to need at least 35 points to come away with the W, and I think that's one of the keys to the game. I want to thank our crew, Luke Lassord, along with Alex Diamond. A lot of Redskins fans in attendance here looking for RG3's autograph. That is the noise you hear, and we thank you so much for watching Game Time Live, presented by Verizon. Enjoy the game.